Diane Downs, born Elizabeth Diane Fredrickson on August 7, 1955, in Phoenix, Arizona, is a name that sends shivers down the spine of those familiar with her story. A seemingly ordinary woman, Diane's life would unravel into one of the most infamous and disturbing cases in true crime history. The night of May 19, 1983, is etched into the annals of criminal infamy, a night when a mother, consumed by selfish desires and dark psychological traits, chose a path of unimaginable horror. On that fateful night, Diane Downs drove her red Nissan to Mackenzie Willamette Hospital in Springfield, Oregon. Inside the car were her 3 children, Christy, aged 8, Cheryl, aged 7, and Danny, aged 3. All 3 children had been shot at close range. Diane herself had a gunshot wound in her left forearm. She told a harrowing tale to the hospital staff, claiming that a bushy-haired stranger had flagged down her car on a deserted road, demanding her keys, and then shooting her and her children before fleeing into the night.
We were just out, I guess, sightseeing, I guess you'd say. And the kids got tired. They fell asleep in the car, so I decided to just head on home. But I saw a road I hadn't been on before. We like to take back roads, and just went down that road. And there was a guy standing in the road, flagging me down, so I stopped. Everything was done in a matter of 5 or 10 seconds. He swung himself around and fired twice. One caught me in the arm, the other one I went off somewhere. Danny cried the whole way. I could hear him softly just moaning, and Christy was dying.
Diane Downs' motive for shooting her children in 1983 has been widely discussed and analyzed. The primary motive suggested by investigators and psychologists is that she wanted to remove the obstacle her children posed to her romantic relationship with a man named Robert Knickerbocker. Knickerbocker reportedly did not want children and had ended his relationship with Downs, partly because of her children. Downs believed that if her children were out of the picture, she could rekindle her relationship with him. From the outset, detectives were skeptical of Diane's account. The crime scene did not match her story. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints or tire tracks, and no evidence of the mysterious assailant she described. As investigators dug deeper, more discrepancies emerged. The angle and distance of the gunshot wounds suggested that the shooter had been inside the car, not an outsider attacking from the road. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was Diane's behavior. Despite her children being gravely injured, she seemed more concerned with her own superficial injuries. Her reaction to her children's suffering was disturbingly detached.
Gun. He hit my arm. Everybody says you sure were lucky. Well, I don't feel very lucky. I couldn't tie my damn shoes for about 2 months. It is very painful. It is still painful. The scar is going to be there forever. I'm going to remember that night for the rest of my life, whether I want to or not. I don't think I was very lucky. I think my kids were lucky. If I had been shot the way they were, we all would have died.
One of the hallmarks of narcissistic personality disorder is an exaggerated sense of self-importance. Diane consistently displayed this trait, acting as though she were the center of the universe. She believed that her desires and needs were paramount, often disregarding the well-being and feelings of those around her, including her own children. This grandiosity was evident in her relationships and daily interactions, where she expected others to cater to her whims and validate her inflated self-image. Narcissists crave constant admiration and validation from others, and Diane Downs was no exception. She sought attention and praise, often going to great lengths to ensure she remained in the spotlight. This need for admiration became glaringly apparent during the trial. Diane's bizarre behavior in the courtroom, smiling, laughing, and focusing on her appearance, was a stark display of her need to be the center of attention, even in such a grave situation. Her lack of concern for the charges against her and the fate of her children further underscored her narcissistic preoccupation with herself. A defining characteristic of narcissistic personality disorder is a profound lack of empathy. Diane's inability to empathize with her children was evident in the way she treated them and in her reaction to their suffering. Despite the horrific injuries inflicted on her children, Diane remained disturbingly detached. Her calm demeanor at the hospital and her focus on her own minor injury, rather than the critical condition of her children, highlighted her lack of maternal instinct and empathy. This emotional coldness is a key feature of narcissism, reflecting an incapacity to connect with the pain and needs of others. Narcissists are often skilled manipulators, using deceit and charm to control those around them. Diane's manipulative tendencies were evident in her interactions with law enforcement, hospital staff, and even the media. She crafted a dramatic story about a bushy-haired stranger to deflect suspicion from herself, leveraging her role as a victim to elicit sympathy. This fabrication was a calculated move to manipulate the narrative and protect her own interests, showcasing her adeptness at deceit and her willingness to manipulate others for personal gain. Diane's relationships were marked by exploitation and self-serving behavior. Her obsession with Robert Knickerbocker, for instance, revealed her willingness to exploit her relationships to fulfill her own desires. When Knickerbocker expressed disinterest in a relationship with a woman who had children, Diane saw her children as obstacles to her happiness. Her decision to eliminate them was a chilling example of her readiness to sacrifice others for her own benefit. This exploitative behavior is typical of narcissists, who often view relationships as tools to serve their needs and ambitions. Despite her dark intentions, Diane Downs possessed a superficial charm that she used to her advantage. Narcissists often exhibit a charismatic exterior, drawing people in with their charm and apparent confidence. Diane's ability to maintain a composed and attractive facade, even while harboring malevolent plans, is indicative of this trait. Her charm allowed her to manipulate those around her, masking her true nature and intentions beneath a veneer of normalcy and likability. Diane's narcissism also manifested in delusions of grandeur. She harbored grandiose fantasies about her future with Robert Knickerbocker, convinced that they were destined to be together. Her diary entries and letters to Knickerbocker revealed a delusional belief that eliminating her children would pave the way for their perfect life together. This grandiosity, coupled with her detachment from reality, illustrates the dangerous combination of narcissistic traits that drove her to commit such heinous acts. Throughout her life, and especially during the trial, Diane's self-absorption was glaringly evident. She often seemed more concerned with her appearance and how she was perceived by others than with the gravity of her actions. Her preoccupation with her own image, even in the face of overwhelming evidence of her guilt, highlighted her narcissistic focus on herself. This self-centeredness was not only a personal trait but also a driving force behind her criminal behavior, as she prioritized her desires above the lives of her children. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, Diane maintained a victim mentality, portraying herself as wronged and misunderstood. Narcissists often adopt this stance when faced with criticism or accountability, deflecting blame and painting themselves as the aggrieved party. Diane's continued claims of innocence and accusations of a judicial conspiracy reflect this tendency. Her refusal to accept responsibility for her actions and her insistence on framing herself as a victim underscore her narcissistic inability to acknowledge her own faults.
This man shot my daughter. My first reaction was to snap back to my childhood, to the pain that had happened to me back then, my marriage, my entrapment by society. This man was bigger than me. He was stronger than me. He had more power because he had a gun. And I stood there and I looked at Christy reaching, and the blood that just kept gushing out of her mouth. What do you do?
Diane Downs is also a chilling embodiment of psychopathy and antisocial behavior, her actions and demeanor providing a stark illustration of these psychological disorders. Psychopathy is characterized by a constellation of traits including superficial charm, manipulativeness, lack of empathy, shallow emotions, and a propensity for deceit and violence. Antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, closely related to psychopathy, involves a pervasive pattern of disregard for the rights of others, deceitfulness, impulsivity, and a lack of remorse for one's actions. Diane Downs' behavior, both leading up to and following her heinous crimes, offers a profound insight into these disorders. While Diane Downs was not formally diagnosed as a psychopath, her behaviors and personality traits strongly align with those seen in individuals with psychopathy and narcissistic personality disorder. The combination of these traits contributed to her capacity to commit such heinous acts and her disturbing lack of remorse. Understanding her psychological profile helps to shed light on the complex interplay of personality disorders in driving criminal behavior, particularly in cases involving extreme violence and manipulation. After being charged with the horrific act of shooting her children, one would think she would be consumed with guilt and remorse. Instead, Diane made a move that baffled everyone. She got pregnant again.
Pregnant at trial. Why did you get pregnant again?
I was extremely lonely. I missed my kids desperately. I had just seen Christy on the 2nd of October, and it's like opening a wound and pouring salt in. I was extremely lonely, beyond belief and beyond explanation. And on October 13th, I just went and got pregnant because I was so lonely. I love my children. I miss my children. And I know that sounds simplistic. It really does. And I have to admit that. And that's why I say there's so much more feeling inside than I can give in 2 minutes. See them try to take this baby from me. And how? I got pregnant because I miss Christy and I miss Danny and I miss Cheryl so much. I'm never going to see Cheryl on earth again. And you can't replace children, but you can replace the effect that they give you. And they give me love, they give me satisfaction, they give me stability, they give me a reason to live and a reason to be happy. And that's gone. They took it from me. But children are so easy to conceive.
By presenting herself as a pregnant woman, Diane might have hoped to garner sympathy from the jury and the public. A pregnant woman evokes a sense of vulnerability and compassion, which could influence the trial's outcome in her favor. Even after her conviction, Diane Downs continued to display narcissistic and manipulative behaviors. She has given numerous interviews from prison, maintaining her innocence and seeking to manipulate public perception. Her persistent self-absorption and lack of remorse are consistent with her psychological profile, demonstrating that her narcissistic tendencies have remained unchanged despite her incarceration.
But you did not commit these murders? Or the murder and the other crimes you were convicted of?
Absolutely. I didn't commit them, and I still maintain my innocence. Somebody in the road flagged us down. I stopped and got out of my car, and he said something to the effect of, "I want your car." And I laughed at him, and I said, "You've got to be kidding."
Today, Diane Downs remains incarcerated, a stark reminder of the potential for darkness within the human psyche. To conclude this deep dive into the disturbing case of Diane Downs, we are reminded of the fragility of human life and the devastating impact of psychological disorders on behavior. The story of Diane Downs is a chilling testament to the dangers posed by individuals with such profound psychological disturbances. It serves as a powerful reminder to remain vigilant and aware of the complexities of the human mind. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of one of true crime's most unsettling cases. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more in-depth analyses of notorious female psychopaths and murderers. Until next